Welcome to Rise to the Summit. This is our first transmission, promoting and explaining what you can expect from the upcoming Pyradym Summit at the tail end of April in sunny North Carolina. To kick things off, August, how about you give us just a little bit of background as to how the Pyradym Summit came to be? How long have you been running these, and what's the objective?
I think this is going to be the fifth one, and they've been happening rather irregularly. I'm trying to remember the first one. It was in a completely different location. It was when I was still teaching college, so we used one of the ill-used classrooms in one of the campus buildings in the middle of nowhere kind of thing. Because there's a PowerPoint presentation and all that to represent some of the waveform phenomenon and some of the frequency stuff. Just to have some sort of a visual image for people to identify with as you describe frequency phenomenon. It's one of my favorite expressions is like tap dancing about architecture. It's a really kind of a difficult thing to explain unless you have some form of images. And from my teaching career, I'm pretty adept at going at it with a whiteboard. But a lot of times I think people, it's easier to just demonstrate it with Pyradym because it is such a rudimentary and immediate sort of instrument. And explaining Pyradym again, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a sound is worth 10,000 words, and so you can demonstrate some frequency phenomenon that people, you know, hearing about but really don't know what it is, because that's also part of what my goal is with the Pyradym Summit is to sort of give everybody a basic understanding of what frequency phenomenon is. And I won't say frequency medicine specifically, even though that's kind of that's the end product of it. But frequency phenomenon are physical and energetic properties that we all experience throughout, every day of our lives, but really just sort of take for granted. We don't really stop to go, oh, that's there's a Doppler effect going on there, or there's some sort of phase cancellation going on there, or the idea of what bandwidth is, and things of that nature. So we're sonic beings in this environment, and so I think having a better understanding of um, sonic phenomenon, frequency phenomenon, and there is a difference. There is a difference between sound and vibration. So being able to become more conversant. That's sort of my goal from a presentation perspective and as a teacher, but also to provide a platform for other individuals that have their own unique perspective on this and what attracted them to Pyradym in the first place, not as in the instrument per se, but being able to apprehend their concept of what they could do with this little toolkit, with what they're trying to achieve with their life. I know it's kind of a 25-cent explanation, but there you go.
No, it's great. And what struck me most about that, I think, was in your opening line, the term of haphazard, because through my own experience with Pyradym, I think the first thing that we come to learn is that there isn't anything to learn.
Mhm.
And when you describe it as haphazard, it's in a sense that kind of describes the relationship with Pyradym, because it's not, I mean, there's so much that you share with us at these summits, but it's not a teaching in the traditional sense of learning something, if there's anything that I think that we are to learn from it, it's to learn about our own self and our own relationship with this instrument because it is an intuitive device.
Hmm.
And from my experience at the summit last year, which was fantastic, was really to reflect with other paradigm guardians as to what they bring to it. And that's something that we're going to be seeing more of at the upcoming summit, if I'm not mistaken, is the participation of the other guardians because we're all bringing a different angle. I remember the first one that we came to where oh, her name escapes me now, but she put the paradigm under the chair.
Oh, Phyllis. That was Phyllis
Phyllis.
Tempest.
Yes.
Yeah.
And set it to the crown chakra and said, just sit on there and did some work with it. And I didn't experience it myself because there wasn't time permitting. But
Mhm.
I just thought that that was amazing. And it was certainly not anything that I would have ever come up with. And I think it is important to understand that each one of us has our own, as Anna says the trailer, has our own. You bring that, and it's to the summit really enriches that and gives that sense of empowerment
Mhm.
to the guardians in attendance, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's, a lot of people asking me ask questions, basic questions about paradigm. Can you do this and can you do that? And application sort of thing. And again, coming from a background of creating musical instruments, the answer is always yes, because, I just sort of, brought forward this concept of having something that you could work with along the same lines as a singing bowl, but will be much more adaptable and being able to do different things with it and recreate some of the sounds you hear in your head and present them that way. And how you apply it is up to you. And again, Phyllis blew me away the first time when she did that. She put it under a chair, and then as her way of doing it. And the people that were had experienced that were blown away by it. And I thought that was kind of, I've never seen that before. That was kind of cool, but that's how she made it her own. So it's a Swiss Army knife sort of application. Some people like the bottle opener, some people like the toothpick, it's whatever you want to use with this, again, this Swiss Army knife, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and leading on for that, I mean, one thing that I'm excited for this year is to see of Anna's work because she's such a force within her massage therapy, but now she's reporting how much she's been including Pyradym into her practice, and now she even has some of her clients that are requesting individual Pyradym sessions or Pyradym sessions prior to the massage. And I think, back to this aspect of the Swiss Army knife and how everyone has a different approach. I think from
Mhm.
a practitioner's perspective, and if there's anyone out there that's considering bringing this into their practice, and I know one person, Catherine, you're out there,
Mhm.
a friend of mine from the UK, she just watched the How Does It Feel documentary,
Mhm.
and she was blown away by it, and she felt it immediately, and she many modalities of massage and cranial sacral cranial
Yeah. Yeah.
therapy under her belt, and she's very interested to bring it into her practice when she relocates to the United States this coming year.
Mhm.
Um, so I think for any practitioner that may be considering attending the summit, this is something that you most definitely will gain from it, is to see how somebody has worked with it now for what, a year and a half, 2 years?
About a year and a half. Yeah, and it's great because she is such you know, if I was writing the script, she would be like the poster child because, you know, I think because she's my personal, you know, massage therapist, you know, and she helped me recover from a number of shoulder injuries and all sorts of other injuries from playing ice hockey for, you know, a lot of years. Um, and so it never really even came up in conversation of, you know, so what do you do kind of thing. Um, and then I brought it in. I think it probably was about my 10th appointment. I finally brought Paradigm with me and said, "Oh, this is what I do." And she was blown away by it. And then she said, "I want one of those." And then, you know, of course, then she finally received hers and she really didn't implement it into her practice for probably about a year. She was, you know, just sort of feeling it out and kind of reconciling what she does with what Paradigm does and how they can sort of make an arrangement of how to conduct, you know, conduct business to the benefit of the client. Because again, at the end of the day, it's all about the client. Um, and now it's such a useful tool in her practice. And then again, a lot of people have used to have a massage and then a paradigm session either before or after the massage, and now they just say, you know, we'll skip the massage for today. I just want to do that with you today. So it's you know, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and hearing that, I mean, one thought that just raced across my mind was the aspect of how many units in the world now?
We're working on number 76 right now.
76, and we have about last year we had about a dozen guardians there. It really makes me wonder as to what all the others are doing with their instruments, and then comes the question of I wonder how comfortable they feel about working with it and whether they feel whether they're doing it right or
Mhm.
it's not for them or just a little bit of confusion because I mean with myself I'm quite hard-headed and I've gone through a decade of just pushing and pushing and pushing and I would say now only now after a decade of working with the instrument am I comfortable enough to say that I understand an aspect of the basic principle of Reiki that you're not doing anything, and the more that you can get out of the way and create this synergy with this unusual, to put it mildly, instrument is where the magic and where the work begins, I think, because as I've expressed so many times, I've had sessions where I've felt that I didn't do my best because there's
Mhm.
the ego creeping
Yeah.
in. But then you go around the room with the sharing, if it's a group meditation or if it's a one-on-one, and you get the feedback from the people, and it's to the contrary because the device, the instrument, takes you where it needs to go or where you both need to go. And I think that that's really the point that I'm coming into now is that relationship allowing that, like you say, allow the sound to guide you because we're also benefiting from that journey ourselves, practitioners.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I think in our last conversation, you know, we were kind of talking about the idea of people calling the paradigm a machine and all that, and you know, and again, that's going to be the second part. And you know, again, these pearls of wisdom just fall out of your mouth because you said yes, we're going to explain that, you know, it's not a machine, and we're going to explain to them that it's sort of it exists somewhere at the nexus between science and spirituality.
Hmm.
And it was like, oh yeah, okay, you know. And to me, it's always that reconciliation. And again, that's kind of what the summit is about. Um, like I've said, you know, paradigm coming into being was sort of somewhere between discovery and witnessing to myself, to paraphrase what Bob Moog used to say about inventing the synthesizer. You know, it exists somewhere between, you know, witnessing and discovery. And then when we come to the summit, it's more of an observational negotiation kind of thing. It's like, this is my observation of this. Are you seeing this as well? What are your perceptions of this? Um, because again, has a very reminiscent quality, but it's also very unusual and very unique and sort of out of place in this society. Especially when you think of something of a technology, you don't normally think of that there's some form of spirituality in the mix there as well. Um, and now this is like again, as a very balanced person, as a Libra, seeing that balancing act between science and between spirituality, and then that fluffy part of the intersection there is the where I like to explore and invite other people to observe that as well. It's like, hey, are you seeing this, or is it just me?
Yeah, and that leads me to this next thing, which I'm not going to name names or such like, but it really dawned on me yesterday how unique and grounded, and in unique I mean that this whole thing of paradigm technology is not it's not it it doesn't lend itself to marketing or sales. And you know what I'm talking about. I sent you the link for that. And again, we're not getting into naming names, but these devices that promise this and have some buzzwords here and there and
Mhm.
kind of come from a spiritual aspect, but it's almost like the overselling of that spirituality. And the thing that really dawned on me with Paradigm is Paradigm it doesn't hold space for that. I
Mhm.
don't think we're ever going to see a day where there's that marketing. I mean, yes, we'd like to raise awareness and move things up, but that the promises, the this, the that, because
Mhm.
it's more it is more of an instrument of
Mhm.
its own energetic signature. It's not an energy that I don't think it could ever fit into those boxes of sales. It's like, to me, it's like the difference between oil and water. It doesn't mix like that.
Well, it's interesting because you brought up the number of other paradigm guardians that are out there that are, they've sort of, I don't know, fell off the radar or whatever. And, what are they doing with their paradigm? And it kind of opens up the idea that it's like, well, they probably, they bought it for a reason, and maybe they don't trust the whatever that impetus was to purchase one.
Yes.
And now that they have it, they don't quite know what to do with it. And so I'm trying to reach out to as many of them as I can find, um, that are still in form. um, to say, maybe you might want to come to the summit just to try to reacquaint yourself with the original gist of why it found you. Because again, in the film, I tell that story of demonstrating it at the first International New Age Trade Show in Denver, and people literally coming up the booth, and it was like an empty booth. They didn't see me, they didn't see Paradigm. They, it was, they just it didn't register. But then other people did see it, and so the people that did see it, quote unquote, that purchased one, maybe they might want to reacquaint themselves, and that way they can get their exploration underway, especially in these turbulent times. Um, if nothing else, to assist you in meditation, because again, as the old saying goes, meditation makes you invincible. And so if you can sort of step away from, the cacophony and the chaos of, the current, state of the transition of this planet, um, maybe you can kind of get better grounded to be able to embrace the change more readily. That's always the thing I always say about paradigm is that it stretches you. Again, when I've done extensive paradigm sessions, one after the other, I finish up the day feeling very stretched. I feel very grounded, but very connected with the universal mind all at the same time. And it seems rather unusual place to be.
Yeah, and thanks for rephrasing that, because that was the element that I think I was trying to express in reference to the other guardians, because it is easy to forget and to um, withdraw from it. And it's important to remember, I think, that there is something that brought you to this instrument, or brought the instrument to you if you have one in your possession. And this is something that when we went around the room in last year's Pyradym Summit, we heard some incredible stories about how Pyradym had come into the lives of each respective guardian. And being a Pyradym guardian can be a very lonely place in this world. As you know, I mean, I'm based in New York, and I'm quite fortunate for the circles that I'm in, because there's a lot of people that get it. But I can only imagine if you're the person in, a smaller town or a smaller rural area, and you have this device, and no one's really getting it, or maybe two or three people are getting it. But I mean, personally, I would love to connect with a wider demographic of guardians, and to see what is going on, because from our perspective things are going on, and this energy movement, evolution, call it what we will, is expanding.
hmm hmm Well, and like, and literally too, because there's been an increase in export sales as well, and Thailand just we just shipped one to the UK. There's one coming up. There's going to Australia. I just reconnected with a guy in the Netherlands who received his paradigm from a friend of his that was passing, and bequeathed it to him. So he wanted to connect with the instrument. And so I sent him the manual, and had a really nice connection with him. Um, yeah, so as this thing turns into more of a global network, of support, it might be part of the transformation, and that's necessary at this time.
Yes, and harping back to what you were saying about the turbulent times, and how Pyradym can assist through that, and these transitional times where there's a certain degree of uncertainty and potential fear within the collective consciousness. I mean, how does it lend to that?
Well, right now I'm actually reading an account of how the Dogon cosmology and their perspective, the Dogon culture of Africa, that predates the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, and informed their society. But part of their perspective on the creation of life is all informed by the relationship of a beat frequency, which I find very interesting. I'm still trying to put it all together and get it at my fingertips, as we say, as a musician. It's a really kind of an abstract concept right now, trying to pull it all together. But I find it fascinating that that kernel of a scientific concept of something as simple as the beat frequency, which is very common in music and in synthesizers and electronics and all that sort of stuff. It's resonance. Is a very ancient concept, and it's sort of at the core of creation. and the way it influences water.
Yeah, and this is coming from the people that knew about Sirius B and other stars and planets long before the astronomers.
Yes, absolutely. How about that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and again, this is the sort of things that we get up to at the summit, just bringing in diverse perspectives surrounding this concept, and sort of exploring life, the universe, and everything.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because there's a favorite quote of mine that says, in order to discover new oceans, we must first have the courage to lose sight of the shores. And
Mhm.
that, along my path, this is coming into the subtle energy and frequency medicine. And I'd just like to clarify the aspect of medicine. Medicine is more to do with the prevention of any disease than the cure. So when we do use the term frequency medicine, at least from my perspective, it has more to do with our energetic health maintenance than curing anything. Just to put that there. But where my path led me was into looking at the formation of Western medicine that we've all been conditioned to. We're all subjects to that. We were born into this. This is the world that I was born into. And I found some very interesting discoveries, namely the Abraham Flexner report of around 1910,
Mhm.
which drastically influenced the future of Western medicine because it was pro research, pro pharmaceutical, pro surgery. And it's not to say that there's not benefit from all of those areas, because of course there is. But this ties in again to the aspects of whole brain integration, having the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere working together, neither one being dominant over the other, because prior to the introduction of the Flexner report, certainly in the United States, there was a lot more homeopathic medicine, hospitals, and acceptance of natural remedies. But when we took that sidetrack
Mhm.
into the world that we know today, so much of that has been thrown away. And through my own journey, there was a certain amount I had to loosen my own mind up to accept things, and I still do. But after a decade working with this and studying, I understand that even things that we may not know the biological process that something has upon us, but we know it works because in those old days, the herbalists and such like, they couldn't tell you what was going on internally and how that herb was working to cure that, but they knew it. And there's that aspect of belief in something and trusting in something. And so for me, the aspect of losing sight of the shores in regard to discovering new oceans in reference to Pyradym is allowing that rational part of my mind to quell down while I hold faith and belief in, even though we may not fully understand the mechanisms of Pyradym right now, but the evidence that's coming back, the data that is
Mhm.
coming back, is showing that it's working, and it's working on a level that we may not be able to comprehend right now, which is kind of in line with the aspect of the Dogon. We're waiting for science to catch up in a sense, because like you say, we can't test regard to the level of the test equipment that we have.
Yeah, and again, the adoption of the left brain models of approaching the human existence, and that was, dates back to the, earliest 20th century, late 19th century. Um, this practical scientific approach to things that sort of, are really don't work that well. in that domain. And I mean, the physiological response mechanisms of the human organism. Because again, there's a lot of energetic aspects involved, spirituality. There's that coalescence there, and somewhere in between that can't be explained purely by science. We sacrificed alchemy for chemistry. Where there's a finite reaction that happens when you put these chemicals together in this very specific way, and you get a predictive outcome. Boom, and there you go. It doesn't really work that way because once you get the human spirit involved, things get a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as it were.
I always expressed from the very beginning, the human body is very adept at self-healing as long as you support its ability to do so. I mean, because it is self-healing on a daily basis, even just the normal transactions that occur within your body automatically, that are unsupervised by your conscious mind. Um, your ability to heal is also part of that. And so, again, it doesn't necessarily involve something that's very specific as an intervention like surgery or something like that in order to achieve that level of. And I always do the quotes around healing because again, where does healing come from? That's one of the questions I always like to ask. People that are engaged in, the medical practice, for lack of a better term, sort of setting aside the individual's desire to heal. There their spiritual aspects and their emotional aspects, and again, whether or not they want to heal. Modern medicine really doesn't take that stuff into account. They just kind of see it as a directional sort of thing that begins here and ends here, and they don't really address that spiritual negotiation of the outcome. Again,
And this is something that you'll be going deeper into at the summit this year, correct?
yeah, yeah.
And the other aspects of do you ever wonder why you like a song? Which
Again, everyone again, how does this sound feel? And it's a very simple question. And again, I like asking the simple questions. It's more of a thought experiment because again, being able to change the way you think, as you expressed earlier, being able to change your perspective and the way you think about a subject can affect the outcome of the thing. You know.
that's one aspect that I really enjoy about the summit is that it's more suggestive
Hmm.
than it is lecturing you to absorb some information because it allows for that aspect of we take what resonates with us and we
Hmm.
work with that, and if it doesn't, then we leave it for someone else. And I think that seeing the dynamics of last year's summit, how that all begins to weave together, and it's like a soup.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Everyone's feedback, reflection, and I think that that's the beauty of Paradigm in that essence is that it leaves it open. It wants
Hmm.
our participation. It wants us to do it in our own way and to
Yeah,
find
yeah.
new ways and not to be afraid to to think that we're doing it wrong. And again,
Yeah,
I speak from experience there because for a long while it was like, am I doing this right? I don't know. What are the other guys doing?
yeah,
How am I
yeah.
supposed to do this? And I just kind of got to the point where I was like, forget it. I'm doing it how I do it, and
Yeah,
that's what I've
yeah.
always done in my life, and it's okay.
Yeah. Well, that's what, well, that's what I said. I think I may have said it like about at least half a dozen times at last year's summit is that, we're just making it up as we go along. If you guys are looking to me as their spiritual Sherpa or whatever, it's like, I don't know. Paradigm was almost created by a series of interactions that could almost be considered accidental. Um, but yeah, here we are, and there it is. And again, if you try to look too closely at it, then it gets, that's when it gets even blurrier. So,
Watch the atom.
exactly. So, we're just making it up as we go along because that gives us, that allows us to remain in the question, and that's one of my favorite things is remaining in the question. You ever wonder why you like a song? Where does healing come from? How does this sound feel? These are all, maybe thought experiments to some people. Uh, but, they can lead you to a place that you may not have ever explored before. And that's kind of like, that's what we're opening the invitation to, especially since we're set in Lake Lure, which is a sacred, native land that was just destroyed by a hurricane a few months ago, and is slowly rebuilding. And I think it's very much emblematic of what we're going through as a society right now, where the whole thing is just kind of being, taking a big swipe at uh, everything that was, we thought was in place and steadfast and reliable. And here we are again, making it up as we go along. So,
Yeah, and that kind of, really comes full circle from the aspect, like I mentioned in the beginning, of your choice of word haphazard, because this is an aspect of paradigm of being able to give it its freedom and be, there's such a standard human desire to plan, to have the outcome, to move towards it, and if we don't achieve that outcome then it's viewed as failure.
mhm.
And it'd be very easy for you to gloat and say, oh yes, I always had this in mind and this is that, but the honesty and the authenticity that it's in the moment. You don't know really the next step, but again, the words of worship, if pay attention
Mhm.
to the moment and allow it its freedom to move and move with it, making it up as you go along, then you'll find yourself in probably a better place than you could have planned. And
Yeah.
again, that's certainly my personal journey, and that is something that my time with Paradigm has definitely taught me, because it does teach you things if you pay attention.
Oh yeah. Well, and also let's unpack the pay attention thing, because if you think about the concept of pay attention, pay attention is basically collapsing your focus on something. And of course, you do create your reality with whatever you focus on. So now you're focusing on something that you can make a reality. You can manifest it into, what you want it to be.
Hmm.
Uh, and again, I've always been big on the etymology of words and their origins, and I've never really. I need to look that one up. But and again, that's the thing that just sort of fell out of my head. I don't know how often I have ever used the word haphazard. It's not like a daily occurrence, I assure you.
I haven't heard it too many times from you.
Yeah, but just the portion of the word that says hazard,
Yeah.
sounds like a negative thing, like you pointed out. It's like, but it's not hazardous. It's haphazardous. So what's the hap mean? Is it happy? Is it happy hazard? Like I said, there's again, I really need to to unpack the etymology of that because it's a wonderful word.
Yeah, it's the beauty of the duality as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
another thing that came to mind when you were saying earlier was the consonance and the dissonance. You know,
mm,
that's a natural state, and that's again something I learned that from Paradigm. I'd never,
yeah,
but
yeah,
then it rang bells because it's that push and pull, that tension and release that is life, right? I mean, that's
sure.
the movement of energy also.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, and again, it's all there right on that little panel and that little pointy guy that helps to explore it. And you can interact with it. And, and that's also part of the thing that I'm really starting to embrace is the intelligence that is imbued in Paradigm by virtue of the crystals that are incorporated into its design. It's in its functional design at several different levels, aside from the energetic component of it. In like Honor Britt always likes to say, it acts like a buddy to her. There's a consciousness there.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
it's like having a helper, and that you can interact with in a very visceral and emotional level. Again, how does this sound feel? That's an emotional construct. So,
Yeah, and it's something that I mean, it's with me. It's just a part of me now. It's like whether I'm 1,000 miles away from it or whatever. It's just it's a companion.
yeah,
It's an energy. It's not like my coffee machine.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great, and it does me well. But I don't I don't
Yeah,
find myself thinking about it when I'm in Florida.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing, and it's no exaggeration. I think about half of them, and it's not like I write them down or anything like that because the names do change over time, from what I've understood from various people. But most paradigms have names. I know some people name their cars and things like that, and maybe that's just because they do connect with them that way. But paradigm usually names that's tells you its name. That's what I find really interesting is people pop up from a good night's sleep and know the name of their paradigm. Why? Because it told them that.
Yeah, yeah, and I can certainly testify to that.
Most people's car
No,
don't tell them what it is, what its name is, right?
most people's children don't do that.
Exactly.
So logistically, let's talk about the summit. It's located in Lake Lure.
hmm North Carolina, yeah, in the Chimney Rock area, which is presently closed, I believe. The little town of Chimney Rock, or Chimney Rock Park, I believe it's still not accessible through its main road, but the campground where we're holding the summit is accessible through a different way, coming from the southwest, I believe.
Yeah, and there are full directions
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the website, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you're planning on coming in from the airport, it's probably the best way to come in. You can get in from Asheville, but there's a little more of a roundabout way to get in. But the main drag that most people would normally travel to Lake Lure through Chimney Rock is still closed. Uh,
And there's also a list of accommodations on the website page, right? The Pyradym Summit.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Just all sorts of wonderful bread and breakfasts, and we are actually having this year's event catered. So that you can just stay, stay on site. You don't have to run out to go get something to eat for lunch and come back and all that kind of stuff, which allows you more opportunities to engage with all the other summiteers and and just share. That's really
Yeah,
what
because
you know.
and that is an important part of the magic is in the sharing and much as there are workshops and meditations and musical performances, another key aspect of it is just having time to meet and mingle and connect with
Yeah, yeah.
the other guardians.
And also part of the intention is I want to get as many paradigm units on site as possible, so that if you finish your lunch early and you've got 20 minutes, half an hour, or 45 minutes before the next presentation begins, you say, could I have a session with you just really quick? I just want to lay down and and get a session, give a session. We're going to be doing some of those exchanges, and which is a great opportunity for individuals that do not have a paradigm, so they can explore the instrument and what they can do with it, while they're there, and have a great exploration with it.
And just to clarify, it is welcoming to practitioners and non-practitioners alike. So if somebody is interested and just wants to come check it out and immerse in the energy,
Mhm.
they're more than welcome.
Yeah, well, as I've always, as I've said, I think in the interview, when I got started with working on designing Paradigm, my left brain engineer's mind said, okay, well, I'm not interested in reinventing the wheel. I am aware of sound therapy from a distance. I have toned and sung as a musician, and toned just to resonate my body, and done vocal exercises and things of that nature. Um, but the concept of, well, do I really want to create this instrument if there's already one that's out there? I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So again, what else is out there? I keep hearing all about sound therapy this and sound therapy that. So what do I use? And at the end of the day, you get the mechanical solutions of singing bowls and didgeridoos, and tuning forks are basically the mechanical three, and then you get into the computer stuff and all the rest of that, which I just set that aside. Computers are wonderful tools to work with, but I don't really necessarily want to go to one for my healing process. Um, but again, exploring paradigm from that perspective of having something that you can connect with the way a musician connects with their instrument was very valuable. So again, I want to get into sound therapy. So what do I use? Well, why don't you come on down to Lake Allure and play around with some paradigm and some paradigm, get to know some paradigm guardians and hear their perspectives, and see if paradigm is right for you.
Yeah,
As
and
they say
connect
in the
with the
drug
land and
commercial.
help the land
Yes, and help that land heal. Yes.
heal up and
Yeah. Spread
align.
some money around in the decimated local economy, which are, still very hard hit. All the little shops and the little restaurants and all all the little people, the little families that own most of the businesses around Lake Lure are scrambling.
And just to make note of it, the land itself is sacred from the Cherokee
Yes,
tribe, I believe,
yes,
and it has also been cleared and blessed from the Cherokee elders and is preserved, if I'm not
yes,
mistaken, right?
mhm, yes,
For anyone that may be energetically sensitive,
hmm,
it's pure land.
yeah. And again, I find it very interesting that some places of Chimney Rock were decimated, but a lot of the places, particularly some of the more I guess energized areas, were completely unscathed. And one of those areas is where our summit is being held. It's a former Girl Scout camp.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And yeah, it's a wonderful place, full of character,
yeah, yeah.
in lovely scenery, and all the info is at the Pyradym site,
Hmm.
pyradym.com.
Yep. And also on Facebook.
Yep, Facebook. There'll be links beneath this in
Hmm.
the comments section, and I guess for now we'll wrap it up, and we'll be back next week
Yeah, yeah.
with some more.
Yeah.
some surprise guests, and who knows, because we are just making it up as we
Yeah,
go
we are
along.
making it up as we go along.
And it's beautiful.
Just like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, so if you're sitting on the fence wondering about coming, you shouldn't. There are no shoulds, but please
Yeah.
do because it is for you. And bring a friend, tell a friend. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Until
Ben.
next time.
Yeah, thank you.